Today is Sunday, July 14th, 2024. Last week's video chat was titled, "What Should the Democrats Do?" And I concluded by saying I didn't know what to think exactly. So I've kept at it. And I've spent some time over the past week pondering what I will call the right move for Joe Biden and the Democrats. Should he stay or should he go? The Democratic House is on fire, figuratively speaking. And there's certainly no shortage of reporting and pontificating about what's going on, and particularly following Joe Biden's abysmal debate performance back at the end of June. So I've had to sort through all that, and one thing I did conclude last week was that there are really only two realistic options. One is for Joe Biden to continue. That's the first option. The second option is for him to turn over the reins to Kamala Harris and let her take on the campaign from going forward. Bear with me here. I want to share some quotes and some data that I collected. So I'm going to have to read some of this, but hopefully it won't be too distracting. But the fundamental question is really which option offers the best chance to the Democrats for actually winning the election. That's the big issue. So it does help to look at some data, imperfect as it may be. And there was a recent Washington Post editorial on July 13, I think it was. And it stated that President Biden's post-NATO news conference, and I'm going to read this, did not produce the clarity many were looking for. And that this only prolongs the Democrats' predicament, right? So the editorial actually included some data, and it was primarily a poll, fairly recent poll, post ABC News Ipsos poll. And it said that 85% of Americans now say that Biden is too old to serve 4 more years as president. And 56% of Democrats say Biden should end his candidacy. So, nearly as I can tell, and based on that same editorial, the president's approval rating is about 36%. And the editorial concludes that the best way to keep Trump away from the Oval Office is by offering a strong alternative, whatever that may be. But at this point, and on this point of the alternatives, Nate Silver, who's a pretty well-known statistician, poker player and interpreter of polls, agrees on the choosing an alternative. And by the way, I view Nate Silver as a pretty hard-nosed, data-driven guy, so I think he is worth listening to. And he sees Kamala Harris as the least bad option, all right? And Silver concludes that the Democratic problem is really Biden-specific, and in any election that Biden could win, any reasonable Democrat could also win. So there were some polls that tested Trump versus Kamala Harris. They show her slightly behind Trump, but no worse than President Biden's standing in the same polls of him versus Trump. So, and Kamala Harris hasn't been campaigning as president at this point, so maybe she can improve that. Anyway, on his website, Nate Silver, it's called natesilver.net, and he has a thing called the Silver Bulletin, and he offers 33 reasons to conclude that Kamala Harris makes sense as the Democratic presidential nominee. So I'd recommend that you read this for yourself and draw your own conclusions. In addition, the Pew Research offers some detailed data. They did a July 11 report. They show Trump in the lead, and then they also take into account third-party candidates. So let me see what it says is particularly Joe Kennedy. If the election were held today, Trump gets 44%, Biden gets 40%, and Kennedy 15%. And Trump still comes out ahead in a two-way race, 50% to 47%. Now, the Pew report also says that third-party voters are less motivated and they don't always show up. But 6 out of 10 voters say that a Biden-Trump situation is embarrassing. May that be the case. The mental acuity issue looms large, all right? And more voters, I would say, it's the Pew report said that twice as many voters view Trump's mental acuity as better than Biden's mental acuity. They say he's mentally sharp, and mentally sharp, I think, is the phrase they use. So at least two times more voters say that Trump is mentally sharp as say that Biden is mentally sharp. So I would say that by elevating Kamala Harris as presidential candidate, the mental acuity issue would be reversed, and it would put Trump more on the defensive. And it should eliminate all this media focus on Joe Biden's fitness. I mean, and every day waiting for another gaffe or another sign, and actually turn more attention to the issues of substance that really, in the end, are going to be the most important and really represent the stakes in this election. So the Democrats are going to have to unite very quickly behind her and get on with winning the race. It's going to be a very difficult election.